Request is sent for final approach.
A 737 heads for a Brazilian airport on the edge of the Amazon.
Aren't we supposed to be landed in Belém?
I think we're close.
But Varig Flight 254 never reaches its destination.
Something is very, very, very wrong here.
No visible lights, Captain.
54 people and a jetliner have vanished without a trace.
When the flight didn't land, it was declared an emergency.
As they took the reported position of the airplane, it wasn't there.
The desperate hunt for a missing plane
This is our generator.
will lead to an astonishing find.
It's something I'm still mystified by.
Brazil in the late 1980s is a country in transition. South America's largest nation is preparing for its first presidential election in almost 30 years. But today, all eyes are intently focused on another contest. Millions of football-mad Brazilians tune in as their beloved team takes on arch-rival Chile in a crucial World Cup qualifying match.
That football match was very important because if Brazil lost, they would be eliminated for the first time in World Cup history.
The critical match in Rio is all anyone is talking about. Even more than 1,000 miles away at Marabá Airport, where the crew of Varig Flight 254 is getting ready for takeoff.
So, Nilsson, you think Chile has a chance tonight?
When it comes to the World Cup, Captain, nobody has a chance against Brazil, huh?
Varig Flight 254 is scheduled to fly north from the mining town of Marabá to Belém, near the mouth of the Amazon River. The crew checks the forecast and dials in a compass heading to guide them to their destination.
In the 737-200s, which is an older generation airplane, they don't have the modern flight management computers. They're using an older technology of ground-based radio navigation aids.
There are 48 passengers on board, including Carlos Siqueira.
Eu estava saindo de folga.
I was taking time off. I worked for a mining company in Marabá,
Eu estava saindo de folga.
and I was returning home to my city of Belém.
Para minha cidade, Belém.
Here we go.
Captain Cesar Garcés is flying the airplane tonight, while First Officer Nilson Zille monitors the instruments.
V1. Rotate.
At 5:35 p.m., the Boeing 737 gets airborne.
It was a very routine flight. It was a clear day. There were no weather issues. There wasn't any reason for them to be worried about anything.
The flight should take less than an hour.
Since I worked in Marabá, I usually took that flight every 20 days.
Preciso pegar aquele voo.
After 23 minutes, the flight computer tells the captain that they're getting close to Belém.
This airplane had the performance management system where they could enter the distance to the destination, and it would help improve the fuel efficiency.
Looks like we're nearly there.
The pilots try to contact controllers on the ground.
Belém Tower, Varig 254. Requesting descent.
Strangely, they get no response from the tower.
Belém Tower, Varig 254. Belém Tower, do you read?
Let me try. Belém Tower, Varig 254.
The pilots, I think, would have been surprised. First, did they have a communication radio problem? Why can't they talk to air traffic control?
That's funny.
What?
We're not picking up the beacon either.
Airports are equipped with very high-frequency omnidirectional range beacons, or VOR beacons. They send out signals that planes follow to the runway.
I've got nothing.
Varig 254 isn't picking up the signal from Belém Airport.
I'll call the tower on HF.
The captain switches his radio to high frequency and tries making contact again.
Belém Tower, Varig 254.
They were not able to raise air traffic control on their VHF communication radios. It happens occasionally, and it requires then the use of a much longer range radio system.
Belém Tower, Varig 254.
The strategy works.
Varig 254, Belém Tower, go ahead.
As you approach the destination, you have radio navigation tuned up to that specific beacon on the ground.
Belém, we're on approach, but we aren't seeing the VOR. Is the beacon down?
Negative 254, looks like it's on your end.
In this case, they weren't receiving that,
Understood.
and they were doing what is deduced reckoning or dead reckoning.
The captain checks his performance management system and calculates when they'll arrive at their destination.
Belém, we're 25 minutes out. Request to send for a final approach.
Roger, Varig 254, clear to flight level 200.
The controller clears the crew down to 20,000 feet.
Flight level 200, Varig 254.
Air traffic controllers in non-radar environments separate the airplanes by time. So these position reports are very critical, and it's required that if your estimate to a fix changes by more than 3 minutes, you're required to advise air traffic control of that revised estimate.
The plane should soon be at the airport.
When the plane was descending, it seemed like it was a normal landing.
Fez o procedimento normal.
As the plane drops below the clouds, the captain looks for the lights of Belém.
They break out of the clouds expecting to see terrain that they're familiar with.
Where are the lights?
And expecting to see the airport.
Where's the airport?
And to visually align the airplane with the landing runway. They don't see that.
Instead, there's only darkness, as far as the eye can see.
That's when everybody thought, where is he going to land if there's no runway? Belém is not there.
Aren't we supposed to be landed in Belém?
Aí começou a...
Panic started building in the airplane. People were asking, why aren't we landing in Belém?
Não vai pousar em Belém?
What's going on?
Wait a minute. I think we just overshot the airport.
The crew may have discovered the problem. The performance management system shows that they've flown 30 miles past their destination.
You wanna do a 180?
Yeah. Turn right, heading 090.
Turn right, heading 090.
The crew really began to realize, okay, we've made a small navigation mistake. We need to find the airport and go ahead and land.
The pilot didn't offer any explanation. He simply proceeded to maneuver and turn around. And it was already nighttime.
À noite.
Belém, we are very close. Requesting further descent to flight level 40.
254, you are clear for descent, flight level 40.
The controller clears the plane to descend further, to 4,000 feet. The captain expected he would be landing in Belém in about 5 minutes. On the football pitch, Brazil has taken the lead. Their goal of reaching the World Cup is in sight. But in the air,
No visible lights, Captain.
the pilots of Varig 254 are no closer to finding the runway.
Their actions indicate a slow realization that they are not where they think they are.
What's our fuel?
Now the question arises is, what are they going to do about it?
At Belém Airport, the controller is growing concerned. Flight 254 should have landed 10 minutes ago.
No visible lights, Captain.
They knew now there was a serious problem. When the flight didn't land, it was declared an emergency. On Flight 254, the situation is becoming critical.
We need to land soon, or else we're gonna run out of fuel.
I think we're close.
When he flew over where he thought Belém should be, he didn't find it. It's very easy to find Belém. He didn't understand what was happening.
Why don't we see if we can pick up a local radio station from Belém?
The captain tries to home in on a local radio signal, hoping it will help guide them toward the city.
The automatic direction finders, or ADFs, are capable of tuning up AM radio stations, commercial AM radio stations. And that would have been very critical because this is a low population area. There's not a lot of geographic visual clues. You're talking about the Amazon.
The do-or-die match is being broadcast by radio stations all across the country. Brazil leads 1-0 with 20 minutes to go, when suddenly, controversy erupts on the field. One of the fans threw a flare that fell right next to the Chilean goalie. The goalie pretended that the flare hit him and cut himself with a razor blade. His face was covered with blood,
and the Chilean team abandoned the field.
O time do Chile abandonou o campo. Se o Chile
If Chile left the match for security reasons, they could be declared the winners of the match.
vencedor do jogo,
Aboard Flight 254, the pilots have managed to pick up a local station broadcasting the match.
Now we can follow the signal towards Belém.
Turning right, heading 165.
Passengers can't understand why the plane is turning yet again.
Aí foi quando o pessoal,
We were getting extremely worried.
o povo, nós perguntávamos,
The plane is going back and forth.
mas o que está acontecendo? Fala pra gente.
The stars and the moon were on one side, and now they're on the other side.
A lua com a estrela está do lado. Ora,
There's something wrong here. What's going on?
tá vendo?
The captain is confident he's now on course. He's spotted a landmark on his radar.
There we go. We're over the Amazon now.
Belém is near the mouth of the Amazon. Following the river should lead the pilots to the city. But moments later, there's serious trouble.
We've got a fuel warning.
Flight 254 is running out of fuel. The pilots suddenly realize they can't make it to Belém.
Do you want to put out some flaps in case we lose power?
Yeah.
They'll have to crash land in the dense Amazon rainforest.
Flaps to 2. We need to do a controlled descent. I better prepare the passengers. Ladies and gentlemen, we have had a malfunction with our navigation instruments, and we will be making a forced landing.
O que é que ele falou pra gente?
He said there was going to be a forced landing, and that we should all take our emergency positions. Bend your head down and hold your legs together.
Isso, segurar as pernas. E que Deus
And may God help us. Those were his words.
vai falar dele.
And may God help us.
Panic begins to take hold in the cabin.
alguns,
Some people were praying.
outros,
Others raided the bar and drank everything.
outros ficaram
Others were looking for the best spot in case of a crash.
em caso de batida, outro passageiro
Another passenger sat in the last row,
na última fila, pegou
and he grabbed all the pillows and completely covered himself with them.
At 8:45 p.m., Flight 254 runs out of fuel. The left engine is the first to die.
We just lost an engine!
Hang on. I'm going to push her down.
There goes the other one!
With the second engine gone, the 37-ton jet sinks closer and closer to the ground below.
Tô de olhos.
You have your eyes closed, your life flashing before you.
Pede a Deus
You ask God forgiveness for all the wrong things you did in your life.
na vida, né?
The inevitable impact is just seconds away.
Just need to bring us down. Nice and slow.
E depois,
Then what happened was it started to touch the top of the trees.
cada olho fechado.
You're expecting the worst.
O pior, né?
He made the most difficult forced landing in the history of aviation.
Deus meu do céu.
O momento que parou o avião. Eu fui.
When the plane stopped,
Eu me toquei
I
todinho.
felt myself all over to see if I had any cuts
Fratura exposta.
or broken bones.
Qualquer coisa quebrada. Aí, não, meu pensamento mais...
And then I thought, am I in heaven?
Será que eu tô no céu?
Have I died and I'm already in heaven?
Morri, tô no céu já?
Of the 54 passengers and crew, 48 have survived. Many are badly hurt, including First Officer Zile.
o copiloto Nilson.
The first officer, Nilson Zile, was pierced on one side by a tree branch, and he was badly injured. He fractured his leg and his shoulder.
Listen,
Captain Garces quickly takes control of the situation.
I'll come back and help you out to check the passengers, okay?
Comandante
Captain Garces didn't get hurt. He didn't even have a scratch.
A partir daquele momento,
At that point, Garces did everything that a captain must do.
comandante
He helped those that he could help.
dentro do avião,
He freed whoever he could, those who were trapped in the metal debris.
ele foi libertar.
We have to get you out of here, okay? Can you hear me?
Surviving the crash landing feels like a miracle to many of the passengers, but they now face a new threat to their survival. They're stranded in the vast Amazon rainforest with no food, no water, and no guarantee that they'll ever be found. The shattered fuselage of a 737 is now the only shelter for survivors of Varig Flight 254. The plane's sudden disappearance over the Amazon rainforest has left Brazilian aviation authorities grasping for answers. They turn to Colonel Ronaldo Jenkins, an air crash investigator with the Brazilian Air Force.
They called me and said there's a commercial aircraft that was supposed to arrive in Belém, and it didn't arrive. But no one knew exactly what happened to the plane.
They left Maraba on time, but never got to Belém. This is our search right here, gentlemen.
The first challenge is to locate the aircraft and figure out the best way to reach it, because initially we weren't sure where it was.
Investigators interview the last person to be in contact with Flight 254, the Belém air traffic controller.
According to the controllers, the communications were quite normal, other than the strange fact that they weren't receiving a signal from the ground-based equipment, the VOR beacon at Belém.
He said he was close. He asked me for descent.
Belém Airport is not equipped with radar. The controller can only tell investigators the pilot's last reported position.
Because there was no radar. The air traffic controller relies on the proper navigation skills of the pilots and their timely reports.
With little else to go on, rescuers concentrate the search in a small radius around Belém. They find no sign of Flight 254.
You never start with a preconceived idea that such and such happened. Exploded mid-flight, lost an engine. None of this. In other words, you go in search of the aircraft that left one location and was supposed to arrive in another.
Investigators also comb through satellite data, hoping to find a signal from the plane's emergency transmitter. The distress beacon is designed to activate after an accident to help guide rescuers to the plane.
The impact should have set off their locator. All we have to do is figure out which one is Flight 254.
But the signal from those beacons is on the same frequency as other emergency transmissions, making it hard to pinpoint the plane.
Every time you use this frequency, or speak on this frequency, the satellite receives those messages. And so it's a lot of work to identify which one is the real position of the airplane.
Meanwhile, somewhere in the Amazon rainforest, the survivors of Flight 254 are struggling to stay alive.
I was part of a group that went out to search for water. There was a stream nearby. We drank some water and we took some back for the people who were in the plane.
There's some water. I have some water, man.
But Carlos Sequeira's efforts can't save everyone.
There were people there who were severely injured and in horrific pain, and some of the passengers started dying.
If help doesn't arrive soon, more will die. The captain had hoped rescuers from Belém would find the crash site within hours. Now, a day later, he fears the plane's emergency beacon isn't sending out a signal.
I can get this working if I can just get it submerged.
Some beacons are designed to activate only when a plane is lost at sea.
In the case of the Varig airplane, it was the emergency locator transmitter only transmitted when it was immersed in water.
With precious water in short supply, Garcés comes up with a creative solution.
They urinated on it to submerge it so that it would be activated.
I want to send a helicopter to go and confirm the identity of this signal here.
You get anxious to find the plane quickly, because people have a better chance of survival during the first 48 hours. After that, survivors are more likely to die.
After 2 nights in the jungle, the survivors realize they can't afford to wait to be rescued.
People were weak because we had water, but no food.
Good luck.
A small group sets off into the jungle to find help. Hours later, they stumble on a farmhouse. Their terrifying ordeal will soon be over.
They found survivors.
It's sort of a relief to realize the scenario is not as tragic. And there's an urgent desire to get to the location and start to work.
Then investigators get a shock.
Where did you say they are?
The crash site is nowhere near Belém.
They came down, right? Here.
The wreckage of Flight 254 is lying in the jungle nearly 700 miles away.
How on earth did they get way over there?
We were really very surprised to learn that the plane was in that location. Very far south and very far west of the position where it should have been.
No wonder we couldn't spot the beacon. It's nowhere near the destination.
As search and rescue teams scramble to the remote location, investigators are left with an urgent question.
They were not supposed to be in that location, so they got lost during the flight. Now, what caused them to get lost continues to be a mystery.
The Brazilian military reaches the remote crash site of Varig 254. The survivors are airlifted out. 5 have died waiting for rescue. Another dies soon after.
There were some people who died, not during the crash, but because they didn't get any medical aid.
Many believe more would have died, if not for the skill of Captain Garcés.
I promise you.
Okay?
Garcés was considered a great hero by the Brazilian people because he was the pilot who was able to land a plane in the dark and save 42 out of 54 passengers.
I know this guy. He's a good pilot.
I'm going to put her down.
Investigators are puzzled how a pilot as accomplished as Garcés could have flown so far off course.
While I worked as an inspector for Varig, twice I oversaw Garcés. Twice. And I could see that he was a very disciplined pilot and extremely professional. He knew the aircraft, knew the procedures. He definitely did things correctly.
Our navigation instruments weren't working. It's very strange. I've never encountered something like this before.
The captain claims the plane's instruments malfunctioned. He was forced to navigate by tuning into a radio station.
We had to improvise.
Why don't we see if we can pick up a local radio station from Belém?
News that the crew tuned into a commercial radio station sparks media speculation that the pilots became lost because they were distracted by the match.
You hear a lot of things during an accident investigation, a lot of ungrounded speculation. I would call that an incomplete and unsubstantiated accusation.
At the Amazon crash site, there's been a major breakthrough: the discovery of the plane's 2 flight recorders. The flight data recorder captures detailed information about the plane's heading. Investigators hope it will reveal why Flight 254 was so badly off course.
We were relying on the 2 flight data recorders. Both pilots were alive, so we thought we were certain to come to a conclusion.
They also recover as many documents from the cockpit as they can.
The most important things at that moment were navigation charts. All of them. Manuals, records, anything that would provide support and guidance for the pilots to fly the plane.
Each fragile page is carefully photographed to prevent further damage. Meanwhile, investigators use the heading data to reconstruct the path of the plane.
They took off due west, heading 270.
The flight data recorder was fundamental because it provided us with the track of the airplane, the positions, the times, where the airplane flew.
But the flight data paints a confusing picture. Instead of flying north to Belém, the plane took off west and flew in the wrong direction throughout the flight.
They were flying the wrong way for the entire flight.
This became a central focus of the investigation, to know why the aircraft was so far off course.
Why?
A broken navigation system could explain the mistake. But when investigators try to get more information from the crew, they hit an unexpected roadblock. The pilots' union flies Garcés and Zile to Rio de Janeiro, denying investigators access to them for several days.
The Union believed the investigators would hold the pilots responsible for the crash.
For now, the only words from the pilots that investigators can hear are those captured on the cockpit voice recorder.
Let's hear it.
We just lost our engine. Just need to bring us down. Nice and slow.
It's the hardest part of the job for any air crash investigator, hearing the fear in a pilot's voice.
We just lost the other one!
And listening as a fatal tragedy unfolds.
I'm going to put her down.
Rewind it, please, all the way to the beginning.
Investigators hope the 30-minute recording can tell them why the pilots flew in the wrong direction. But they're out of luck.
There we go.
We're over the Amazon now.
By the time the recording starts, the pilots are already badly lost. Whatever led them off course happened earlier in the flight.
Cockpit voice recorders traditionally have been the last 30 minutes of flight. Only in recent years has that recording length been extended to 2 hours.
The problem started during the first moments of the flight. We didn't have a recording because of the time limitations on the cockpit voice recorder.
Investigators are desperate for more information. They study the navigational instruments recovered from the cockpit.
We set out to make a complete analysis of the entire navigation system of the aircraft.
They know the captain reported a malfunction in the navigation system that put his plane hundreds of miles off course.
That's funny.
What?
We're not picking up the beacon either.
They need to figure out what could have caused such a malfunction. If they don't, the lives of passengers around the globe could be in danger.
We were very concerned because there were at least 30 other aircraft of the same model flying in Brazil. If it happened to one, it could happen to others.
The pressure on investigators is huge. Investigators look into the possibility that the navigation system on Varig Flight 254 malfunctioned and led the crew off course.
In a situation where there's this much confusion about where they are, one of the questions that come up is what systems may have malfunctioned.
They suspect the plane's cargo may hold the key. The 737 has a magnetic sensor in the tail that acts as the plane's compass. It tracks which direction the plane is flying and feeds that information to the cockpit instruments. If something in Flight 254's cargo was giving off a strong magnetic field, it might have confused the sensor.
We studied every aspect of the cargo, even things that might have been on the shipping pallets that might have influenced something in this regard.
They also test every component of the navigation system and check for any sign of failure. But they find nothing in the cargo that could affect the compass, and the instruments are working perfectly.
We verified that there was nothing that might have caused electromagnetic interference. Nothing that could have changed the heading or influenced the change of course.
Investigators catch a break. Flight 254's flight plan has been recovered from the cockpit. Airlines provide flight plans to every crew. It contains critical details about the route they should fly, including the heading they're meant to take.
Oh, thanks. Let's see what this will tell us.
The airline provides the filed flight plan and a computer printout to the flight crews. And this provides a series of waypoints that they're to look for to fly the ground track.
But what if the airline gave the pilots a faulty flight plan? One that sent them in the wrong direction? This could be the lead they've been waiting for.
I think I know what they did wrong.
A close look at Varig 254's flight plan provides a revelation.
In this particular case with the Varig flight, very unusually, their computer flight plan system has 4 digits. This is very, very unusual, as they almost always have only 3. The numbers 0270 was intended to mean 27.0 degrees.
When we noticed that, it gave us the idea that instead of entering 027, which was the heading to Belém, he had entered 270.
He was supposed to fly north, heading 027.
The captain read it as 270 degrees, or due west. So instead of flying northeast,
they went west instead, going 270. He entered the wrong heading.
He set the airplane up to depart west.
270 degrees, or due west on the compass, is more than 240 degrees past the northerly heading of 27 degrees they were given. The moment of truth arrives when they call Captain Garces back in to give his side of the story.
I'll try to help you, but I think I've told you everything I know already.
We told Garces. Look, we have the onboard charts. We have the tapes and all of the documents, verified by us. What is the truth?
At first, the captain is reluctant to admit he made a mistake.
We said, Garces, tell us the truth. You didn't have a problem with the navigation instruments, did you?
Under intense questioning, Garces finally admits he misread the flight plan.
Look, it was an honest mistake.
From that moment on, the cause, or the basic framework of the accident, was determined.
Investigators learned the airline began printing their flight plans this new way while the captain was on vacation.
It's easy to see how you get confused.
Varig had bought some more sophisticated planes, which had instruments that accepted decimal places. But that wouldn't mean anything on this flight, since the Boeing 737-200 didn't have decimal places.
But there's another question. The first officer must also enter the heading from the flight plan.
So, you think Chile has a chance tonight?
Why did he make exactly the same mistake as the captain? Aviation psychologist Kathy Mosier has an answer.
The co-pilot, probably after many experiences with captains who had always done it right and never had to double-check, just entered what the captain had put in and assumed that it was the right thing. So in this case, your safeguard is gone because the co-pilot is not cross-checking.
He could have caught this mistake before they took off.
Once you take off, the automation does what you told it to do.
Varig 254 takes off due west instead of north, straight into the setting sun.
Geared up.
It's an incomprehensible error.
Did they not realize they were flying into the sun? That should have been a big cue. They must have been very confident that they had done the right thing.
The two pilots disagree about how things went wrong.
We need to land sooner. We're going to run out of fuel.
I think we're close.
The first officer was protecting himself, suggesting that he had done everything right, and Garces was at fault.
The original navigation mistake was that of the captain. The failure to independently verify was a mistake on the part of the first officer. What is disheartening here is that both pilots went along with it.
It is now all too clear that Flight 254 was flying in the wrong direction from the moment it took off. A mistake even some passengers noticed.
Well, we thought the person in charge here is a captain.
At least 3 of the passengers warned the flight attendants that the plane was flying in the wrong direction. But the flight attendants thought, well, the captain knows more about this, and they didn't reach Garces to warn him that he was flying in the wrong direction.
We thought that, up in the sky, the captain's in charge, so...
But it's what the captain does next that turns his error into a catastrophe. The crew of Varig 254 makes a critical error in judgment.
We decided to tune into a radio station. Use it to find our way.
Instead of radioing for help, they try to get back on course without admitting their mistake.
His pride prevented him from saying to his colleague, "Help me, I'm in trouble." That would have been a better approach.
Their attempt to use commercial radio stations to find the airport doesn't help. They wrongly assume the signal is coming from Belém. They follow it away from their destination.
When you tune into a radio broadcast, commercial radio, it's possible to receive content originating from different locations.
Can you believe this? They still haven't restarted the match.
You need to verify that it is in fact that station, that it identifies its call letters, and that you have that validation.
Can you believe those guys?
Though there is no hard evidence, some continue to believe the pilots were distracted by the football match.
People say he was listening to the Brazil-Chile match, and that's why he didn't notice his mistake.
But investigators believe there may be a psychological explanation, a quirk of human nature that can trap even the best trained pilots.
There we go. We're over the Amazon now.
The captain spotted a river that he thought was part of the Amazon north of Belém.
You decide on your initial judgment, and you think that it's right, and so you look around for things that support your position.
The crew was looking for signs that they were close to Belém.
He decided to follow that river south to get to Belém.
But the river they saw was not the Amazon. It was the Xingu, a river more than 600 miles southwest of Belém.
You were following the wrong river? How could they be so confused for so long?
Investigators conclude the crew was in the grip of what's known as confirmation bias, the tendency to favor information that confirms something we already believe.
I think we're close.
Confirmation bias is one of the common decision-making biases that people are subject to. And the thing that's insidious about it is that you don't often recognize that that's what you're doing.
When I saw the river, I was sure. I was sure we were close to Belém.
Just goes to show you anybody can fall into decision traps. And even experts have to always be on guard.
In 3+ decades of doing accident investigation, this is one of the most unusual accidents I have ever read or am aware of.
The accident report faults both pilots for the disaster.
As the details of the flight were discovered, the terrible mistake that he made, the captain went from hero to villain.
They were both convicted for their negligence and sentenced to community service. The report also criticizes the Belém controller for not raising an alarm sooner.
The controller at Belém Tower was very worried about the football match between Brazil and Chile. He had one ear on the broadcast of the match and the other paying attention to the flight.
254, you are cleared for descent.
He should have realized there was a problem when the plane could only contact the tower on high-frequency radio, a major clue that the plane is probably far away.
Everybody makes mistakes. Errors are not unavoidable. So the way that you deal with this is you be aware of the threat, you try and trap errors if they occur, and fix them.
I think it was the failure of these two pilots to maintain the highest standards of professional airmanship. I think in that point, they did not meet the necessary mark.
After the crash of Varig 254, the airline changes their flight plans, so the decimal place is clearly marked. They also improve pilot training. Brazil's national radar system is modernized and expanded to cover the entire country, making it less likely that a plane will go missing. Brazil never even made it to the quarterfinals of the 1990 World Cup, which was won by West Germany. The scandal of the Brazil-Chile match faded over time, but the legacy of Flight 254 endures.
This is one of those cases where looking and understanding what this crew did can serve as an absolute bright example to help crews in the future not make these same mistakes.